All right, so we're going to be talking about electrifying stage presence this evening, and I'm the head of the NYC Guitar Group, so I oversee the whole NYC Guitar Group. We have over 5,000 members, so I teach a lot of music classes. But actually, what's really important is stage presence, because you can be a really good musician, but remember, when people come to see you live, they're judging not just what they're hearing, but they're also judging what they're seeing as well. And so there's some technique that you can use to make the show much more interesting. And so we'll be talking about that today. From my late teens into probably my late 20s, I toured in a pop rock band. And so we had a big van and a trailer, and we toured all over the place and played at tons of festivals and tons of venues. And it's really important. When you start playing live, you've got to get that stage show down. You ever been to a show where you see some really great musicians and then they're just like standing there? You ever seen that? Yeah. It really does have an impact, and so it dulls down and it makes the impact of the music less. And so you don't want that. You want to augment the music in every way possible. So unfortunately, some crowds are a little bit superficial, and you can say that's terrible, they shouldn't be that way, but they are. And so we need to work with reality. So go ahead and go to page 1, and we're going to talk about just some of the things that we can add to our show to make it more interesting, okay? So number 1, I think if we go to page 2, stage movement, I think, is very important. Now, if you think about it, imagine that you're looking at a stage and the lead singer is moving forward and backwards. Do you think that that's going to help the show a little bit more than if they're standing still?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess so.
Be a little more interesting.
Dynamic.
Yeah. But now, if you're looking at the stage and the lead singer is moving forward and backward, the movement isn't actually that much, right? Because they're kind of staying in the same place. They're just moving forward and backwards a little bit. So especially if you're standing pretty far back, it doesn't even look like there's a lot of movement, right?
Yeah.
This is why movement left and right across the stage is really important. You have to break the mindset that your feet have to stay right where they're at. And so lead singers often will, if they're a good lead singer, they need to be pacing all along the front of the stage. They'll even move the monitors a little bit, this way so that there's a place to walk in front of them so they can be right near where the crowd is. This type of stuff makes a huge difference. Now, if you're a guitarist and you're playing alone, are you going to be doing that? Well, I don't know if you can do that so much, but you definitely want to have movement. So if your microphone's here, in the breaks between when you're singing, you need to be moving around a little bit. You know what I mean? You need to just get out of that thing, and then when it's time to come back to sing, you just come back. But you need to have that shifting to keep it interesting. So I would say, the more you... Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you. I'll give you a packet here.
Cool haircut.
Huh?
Cool haircut.
Oh, thanks.
Do you have any more pens or pencils?
I
probably
don't actually. Sorry, I don't. Just have this one. Okay, so if you're in a pop rock band, you got to be everywhere. You got to be all over the place. All to that side of the stage, to that side of the stage, way to the front, leaning over the crowd, spitting on the crowd, whatever, and all the way to the back by the drums. All over the place. So let's go ahead and flip to the next page. And in your rehearsals, you need to be practicing this stuff. Page 3, performance attire. It really does make a difference. If you notice a really interesting YouTube video, sometimes people will say some great things, but you'll notice that the best YouTube videos and the ones that are getting a lot of hits, they actually have a really interesting background, don't they? They'll actually put interesting things on the walls, or they'll add a blue light in the background. They do some really interesting stuff like that. The little details make a difference. And so even performance attire, the visual, can make a difference. Some of the professional bands, there's no way that they're getting up on the stage with their normal clothes. You notice the whole band, all 5 people, they have like the same style of dress. You know what I mean? It's either grungy or it's like poppy, whatever it is. How does this happen? Well, the odds are they probably have a fashion consultant. I'm not saying that you need to have that, but the professional bands, they're not even picking out their own outfits most likely, right? Because they would be just debating like, I don't dress like that, man. I'm not going to dress like you. The lead singer usually wants to like tell everybody what to wear and stuff like that. But there is some kind of visual to to playing live. So I would go with something that's interesting or stylish, something that's going to be interesting to people. Okay. Not much to say about that. I think this next one's very important though. Interesting props on page 4. What we used to do when we played live is we would always try to think of a couple of things to throw into the crowd, because you're kind of breaking out of the TV. Like people, if you're just standing there, people feel like they're watching TV. So you do something that breaks out into the crowd, and it just gives, I don't know, it kind of shakes things up a little bit, So what we did is we had boxes made up, and they might have been, something like this tall, and maybe about twice as wide, and they were black wooden boxes, and we painted them black, and they were really heavy duty, and we would bring them in our trailer every time we had a show, and we would put one usually up on one of the sides of the front of the stage by a monitor, so that throughout the show, different ones of us could run up to that box, jump up on top of it, and kind of lean over the crowd a little bit. And that, when you see someone do something like that, you subconsciously think, oh, that's just like abnormal. That's not what was happening before. Oh, interesting. You want to see what's happening. Hey, what's up? And then we would also put one in the back of the stage next to the drum set. How you doing? Good, good to see you. We put one in the back of the stage next to the drum set, and people would jump up on that right next to the drummer, throughout the show. Do you think that would add a little bit of interesting aspect to the show? What do you think? Yeah. Is it more interesting than not having them? Then we should do it. Why not? We would often have CDs, and we, in between songs, we'd chuck out CDs. Just anything we can do to get that crowd interactive. Does anyone else have any interesting ideas for props? You ever seen anything?
I've seen people toss water bottles.
Oh yeah.
Like that. They'll have little bottles, and then it's almost they'll just take a sip and just chuck it. And
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. We used to do that all the time. Actually, our bass player would get up on the box. We might be in a summer festival. Everybody's just so hot and jumping around. You go like this and just go, and just spray all over the place. Or you take the bottle and you keep, you take a drink and then you just go like that. You hold the bottle and the water just sprays all the way across the crowd. This just shakes it up a little bit. It keeps people from after 3 or 4 songs starting to kind of get bored. And you want to have a lot of stuff like that throughout your set. Your set, you might play 5 tunes. It might be 25 minutes, right? You want to have just one thing after another, after another, after another, hitting the crowd, interesting, something they weren't expecting, changing it up, right? And I think that if, obviously the most important thing is the music, but if you have great music and you have great electrifying stage presence, it's going to make that show stand out from everything else, right? So interesting props. I've seen shows where the lead singer just takes a scarf and drapes it over top of the microphone. I mean, I would not do that, but they did that, and then once in a while he'd pull it off and throw it over his shoulder, or just whip it around, just whatever. Just these little tiny things just make it just not the same thing over and over again. Sometimes I would see people, I've seen people using old microphones, like from the 1950s, or one that looks like it. I don't know if you remember those old radio microphones. They put that on instead. It's just something interesting. they'll take the microphone off. They'd be singing like this. The lead singer would grab the chord right here and just start going, and then grab it again and then start singing again. Take your hand and just go like that once in a while. I mean, all kinds of different things. Once in a while, just go like that. Anything you can do to just make it more interesting. So I'd say grab some interesting props, and your style, that's going to determine what props are going to work well for you. And even if you're doing an open mic, people will find it interesting if you just have something, that you can just throw out into the crowd. Number 5, or page 5, planning crowd interaction moments. So when we had a band, we would typically do a 45-minute set. 8 tunes plus, some crowd interaction moments in between the tunes. And we would plan out some of the crowd interactions. When would we, throw CDs? What part? When would we give a little talk? We'd usually take 5 minutes and just share something that's important to us, probably 2/3 of the way through the set. So you want to plan out the crowd interactions throughout the song. Sometimes you can, if you're in a rock band or a pop rock band, you can plan in the last song, the lead singer gets up on the box and then jumps out into the crowd, What we would do is, jump up on the box, and you put your hand out like this, and everybody starts crowding up like that, and then that's the bed that you just you can jump into crowd surf or whatever. So whatever your show is like, you can start to plan out some crowd interaction moments, and good crowd interaction is gonna make people think the show is even better than it would be without it. It's gonna augment your music. People will perceive, your music even better. So
Some of the musicians will do the whole smashing their guitar thing.
Oh yeah, Jimi Hendrix lights his guitar on fire. Right. I mean, it's interesting. Is it more interesting than if he didn't? Absolutely. So much more interesting, We used to do guitar flings, where you take your electric guitar. I don't know have you guys ever seen that? So we'd have to get guitar locks for our straps. So they locked on here and locked on here. And when you have your guitar on, you could take it and you could fling it like this, and it would go up and over and swing down again, and you grab it and you keep playing. So we would do that at certain times in the song, synchronized together. And people aren't expecting it, and when they see it, they're like, oh, that's interesting, that's cool. One time in practice, we were rehearsing it, and I went like this, and it came off the strap lock, my guitar went flying and ripped a whole chunk of paint off of it. That was when I stopped loving my guitar, because it was perfect before then, and then after that it wasn't.
The guitar was okay?
I mean, it still played, but it was beat up, so I didn't like it. So let's go to page 6. Crowd interactions between songs. We were talking about crowd interactions during the songs, but crowd interactions between songs. If you play a show, a lot of times they'll tell you have such and such amount of time that you can be on the stage, right? And you should have your set list ready to go. We would always write out our set list before the show. And it has to change depending on how much time you have. If you have 45 minutes, you'll use one set. If you have 25 minutes, you have to shift it around and cut some songs and determine what song you want. Make sure that you have songs that are, upbeat, and then also some songs that are, more serious. And you want the show to be changing, right? You don't want all the songs to sound the same. So depending on how long our set was going to be, we would cut songs or add songs. And we would think about the impact of the show. Is it, it needs to start off, really aggressive, then dip down to more serious content, and then at the end, end high, so the crowd's, excited. I don't know what approach you want to take, but you should think about the journey that you're taking the crowd on. Almost like like an orchestra. They have movements that are, aggressive and then quiet and emotional, and it just takes you for a roller coaster ride, and that's interesting. So the crowd interactions between songs, we would write our set list we usually rip a piece of paper in half, write our set list out, and set it on the ground right in front of your feet. So as you're going, you know what song's coming next as a band. And you're all on the same track. Crowd interactions. You could write on your set list what happens between each song. This is where I'm going to throw out a CD. This is where I'm going to ask people, where are you from? Anyone here from Brooklyn? Anyone here from Queens? That type of interactions. You could ask, who here came the farthest? Right? And what that does is that gets the crowd and the band interacting and builds, you just get to know people that way. And I think it makes the show a lot better. We would sometimes even, in between songs, if we're going to go into a song that has a singable chorus, what we would do is sometimes we would say, okay guys, we're going to teach you a new song. The song is called, whatever. And here's how it goes. And I would just start strumming just simple chords of the chorus, right? And I'd say, here's how it goes. Listen to me. And I'd sing. And I'd say, okay, now repeat it with me. Let's sing it together. Ready? And I'd get them singing the chorus if it's a really easy chorus to sing. And then, hey guys, you sound fantastic. Here we go. You ready? When we hit that chorus, I want to hear you sing. And then the drummer, starts playing, and the song actually starts. And we go through the verse of the song, the pre-chorus, and then when the chorus hits, guess what? The whole crowd, right before the chorus hits, you say, all right, here we go, guys, sing along. Boom, and then everyone sings along. Is that more interesting than not having it?
Mm-hmm.
Probably. So all these little things, we need to be people of excellence with the music and with everything associated with the performance. Because the performance is not just about the music. It's about the whole, experience. Okay? Anyone have any experience at shows that you can think of how bands interacted between songs?
There's always some typical moments. Is like they're introducing the band.
There you go.
That they have a little break. Seems sometimes spontaneous, but I guess it must be totally planned out.
It's totally.
In this song, we're gonna break. The drummer might be doing a little.
Yep.
Loop and then introducing everybody.
Yep.
There's like, hey, the last time I've been here, a little story about the location. They always do the location.
Yeah.
It's like a little crowd pleaser. Like,
Yep.
New Jersey. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And that's smart. That's great crowd interaction. And you're talking about probably professionals that you go to see.
Yeah, bigger acts.
Yeah.
They'll do that. It's very. I don't know. I don't think they never not do that.
You're right.
And if they've been on the road a lot, they're like, the last time I've been here, it was a great crowd. Thank you for being a great crowd. That kind of stuff.
Yep.
Or just stories about the song sometimes,
Mhm.
which
I love. Do you like that?
Yeah.
I love that. Absolutely. I think.
Especially if I didn't know it. And even if I did know it, I'm like, oh, I know the story.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. And as a songwriter, I actually like it when people know what the song is about because it's meaningful to me, And so we used to do that too. Explain a story. You could have some of the musicians already start to kind of play softly in the background. Like let's say it's a serious story. In between, right before you start the song, the musicians can start to play just instrumentally, and you can, as a lead singer, you can sit there and you can explain the song and why you wrote the song, and then go into it. So, yeah, I think
Can I
it's
share one that
yeah.
comes to mind now that we're talking about this? I always thought it was spontaneous when they would have a fan come up on stage, but now I'm thinking that could have also, it could be spontaneous, but there could actually be having a conversation with one or more of the fans, and then all of a sudden, I just see that as being kind of risky to bring a fan up.
Yes,
But
definitely.
then, if it's planned, you're like, well, this is going to be about 10 minutes or whatever, then it's sort of fun, and it brings everybody closer.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a really cool experience, and it could be that one of their friends came to see them, and they had a good kid along, and so before the show they went out to eat, and they said, hey, I want to bring you up on stage, and here's what we'll do. You'll say this, or we'll, just to kind of make it so it doesn't kind of get off track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all that stuff is pretty cool. I think Coldplay, I saw some video somewhere. It was like Coldplay had this, it was like a chandelier. And the chandelier dropped down during their show, and it was on a chain, and the lead singer grabbed onto it and ran across the stage and swung out over the crowd. I mean, really cool. Yeah, but that's what they do. They think of some really creative and artistic things to add to a show. And even as singer-songwriters, if you're playing alone at a open mic, you can really think of a lot of cool stuff to add. But you have to stop and really take it seriously and think it through. And you want to rehearse through mentally as much as the songs. You want to think about what happens between the songs, how you're going to transition, that whole flow, how are you going to begin, how are you going to end. Those very important parts of a show. Okay, number 7, we kind of talked about this already, breaking through the TV screen. Again, people, if you're not moving around much, they'll kind of like start zoning out after a while, because they're going to feel like they're watching a TV. And you need to just mentally think, how do I break out of this TV and into the world of these people? Jump in, just walk off the stage and walk up to a table if someone's sitting there and just, give them something, or take the microphone off and walk into the crowd and start, asking people questions. There's a lot of things that you can do. Number 8, and I think this is really important. I think we need to think about this. I think in a song or in a show, and this is more of a musical thing, I think that dynamics really matter. And by dynamics, I mean soft and loud. Grab a guitar now. So, watch this. So let's say I'm playing a verse of a song, and it sounds like this. There wasn't a big difference between the verse and the chorus, was there? Subtle. I did take the chorus louder, but the verse was already pretty loud. So there wasn't a huge contrast. And so if I want a huge chorus, well, it's not going to feel that huge because everything right before it was already pretty huge, But listen to this now. Listen to the power of when the chorus hits, when I take the verse and I bring it lower. When you have the verse low, and as you're getting ready to hit that chorus, you're rising, and you just slam and hit that chorus. If you're in a band, or even as a solo artist, you can convey so much emotion by making sure that the dynamic range in your song is greater, right? So you go really low and bring it high, and it makes it psychologically so that if you're low and then you go loud, it's going to feel louder. It's going to feel 3 times louder and more powerful than if you were already pretty loud before you hit that chorus. Something to think about. Not every song can you go really, really low and really, really high. But I just want you to think about utilizing that strategy. Because to me, as a singer-songwriter and as an acoustic guitarist, I believe that I can convey a lot more emotion through this instrument if I have a lot of dynamics. I use it a lot, and I like it, and I just feel like it's a beautiful thing to add to music. So you can do that as a band as well. If you go see, let's say, an orchestra play, they're known for having a roller coaster of emotions during, one of their sets. They'll go really high, really low, and it just takes you all over the place, and it keeps it very interesting. And I think as a band we can do that as well. And then coordinated cuts. I think it's really neat sometimes when you see the band and they're all playing along, and all of a sudden they just boom, they stop, and then they come back in together, and it's just perfect unison. And those little things you're just not expecting. So if you do that maybe 2 or 3 times throughout a song, throughout a set, a show, it can have an impact. See? So when you look at all these things that we talked about tonight, if you take them seriously and you add, them appropriately throughout a show, I think it's going to have a huge, huge impact. The music might sound awesome, but if you have a great show attached to it, it's going to make it twice as powerful. Does that sound good? Is that helpful? Cool. So yeah, put a good amount of time into thinking about these complementary aspects of the show, not just the music, but these other aspects. And I think it'll help your live performances quite a bit. Okay? I'm going to say this too. Go to the last page. At the NYC Guitar Group, if you are ever looking to grow as a musician, especially on the guitar, I think this is the best place in New York City to go for lessons. Okay, we do group classes, we have beginner classes, intermediate classes, and high intermediate classes. And they're 12 weeks each, and they're just rocking. Just the fastest you can possibly progress on your instrument, it's the way that it goes. Because everything's explained very clearly, and so if you're ever interested, we would love to, have you come on board and take some lessons. In my opinion, I think it's the fastest way to go from, let's say low intermediate to advanced level. I think in 24 weeks, if you take the intermediate class and the high intermediate class, you'd be good enough to be a guitar teacher. I know it's hard to believe, but on a knowledge standpoint, you would know more than most guitarists. From a playing standpoint, you might need a little more, experience playing, but at least understanding how the guitar works, you'd learn a lot. So if you're interested, we give away 30-minute one-on-one lessons. And the legitimate lessons are not just, it's not like a sales pitch or anything like that. It's a legitimate 30-minute lesson. And if you like it and you want to keep taking lessons, then you can do that. But if you're interested, just you can fill this out and just leave it with me before you go. And then our administrator will get in touch and just coordinate either a Skype online lesson or an in-person lesson. And even if you don't end up taking lessons, you'll leave that lesson with a lot of good information to help you, know where to go forward with the guitar. Okay? Cool. Any questions about the class or what we talked about tonight?
Is north? Do you consider north south from the direction?
North, south, west. Yeah.
Oh, whatever it is.
Yeah. So basically, don't just walk forward and backwards. Get left and right, because visually, when people are looking on the stage, the greatest movement they're going to see is left and right.
Same line, just
Yep.
perspective.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And so you want to think about that with all the band members.
I got a couple of questions on Attire. It could be takes a lot of energy to perform, right? It's outdoors.